Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 3 of In the 11. Today I'm going to be taking you guys along with me for the story of my journey going overseas and what that looked like. So last episode, in episode 2, kind of the prelude to this episode, so if you haven't listened to it yet, I would definitely encourage you to go back and check that out. I told you about how I graduated college and my thought process was that I wanted to go and I wanted to try and pursue a playing career, and I walk you through kind of some of the steps that I took to achieve that goal or get closer to that goal, and I tell you about my coaching career a little bit and some of the jobs that I worked and all those sorts of things, and to kind of bridge that gap for you and let you know where we're at in terms of the timeline. At this point in time, we're probably in April or so of 2019, and I'm working a 9-to-5 job. I'm also coaching at the collegiate level for a school called Widener University, and I'm coaching at the club level as well. I have a U15s team at a club called Continental FC, which is now known as FC Delco. In April of 2019, I booked my flights and made my entire plan for, in July, I was going to fly to Melbourne, Australia. I had a friend who I had played JUCO ball with who lived there and played with the team. Him and I had been speaking, and I had spoke with his coach as well, and we had kind of set up for me to go down and try out with his team. And my idea was that I was going to trial with the team in July, and then I would return to the States in August, because the way the Australian system works is their season ends in right around August, September kind of. So I would trial with the team sort of in the tail end of their season. Hopefully it would go well, and then I would come back to the States. I would coach for Widener in the fall, and then I would go back and hopefully play with the team full-time or move to Australia full-time in kind of November, December. That was going to be sort of ironed out after I had done the trial and all that sort of thing. So that was my plan for the month of July. And what I had done was I kind of thought, well, since I'm going on this trip to Australia, I'm going to the literal other side of the world, why don't I kind of make a little, world tour out of it? And I booked a flight from Australia up to London, where I had another friend, actually played the same college with me, went to community college with me, and then we went to Philly, went to Chestnut Hill together for a year. And I was like, I'll go to Australia, I'll do the trial, I'll visit my buddy for a little bit, and then I'll go to London, I'll visit my buddy for a few days who I have there, and then I'll circle back, I'll make my way to the States, and actually I'll meet up with my family. They were going to be on their family vacation in Hilton Head, South Carolina. So I'm like, this kind of is going to work out perfectly. Like, it was going to be a really fun month of July, to be honest, because I had, at that point, once we fast forward to July, I had quit my job, and the plan was then I was going to go to my best friend from high school's wedding, then I was going to hop on a plane, I was going to go to Australia, I was going to trial, I was going to go to England, I was going to visit my buddy, and then I was going to come back and have family vacation with my whole family down on the beach. So, I mean, I really couldn't have scripted that better for what I wanted my summer to look like. But obviously, if you've listened to this podcast thus far, you know that that isn't really what the story ended up being and what it entailed. And hopefully, I hope to teach you many lessons as I go through my story and talk to you about some different things that I've encountered. But if there's one thing that I can try and hammer home right now, is that most of the time things aren't going to go according to your plan. And you almost have to expect that things aren't going to go according to your plan, and try and just become flexible and adapt to the situation that's presented to you, and don't hesitate to jump at something if it seems exciting just because it wasn't a part of your plan. Don't let that be the deciding factor in why you don't go ahead and do something and don't go ahead and pursue something. Plans are made to be altered and to be adjusted and to sometimes just be straight up thrown out the window. So I didn't straight up throw this plan out the window, but it was definitely, there were alterations made to it, because as I talked to you guys about in episode 2 and episode 1 a little bit, in right around April of 2019, I had reached out and started communicating with a club in Germany, with a club called FCA Darmstadt. They are located in just outside of Frankfurt in a small-ish city called Darmstadt, and things had gone well communicating with the club, and they had an interest in bringing me in. And like I just said, it wasn't a part of my plan. It wasn't what I had scripted out for myself. So at first, I didn't really know if this was what I thought was going to be best for me and if I really wanted to go ahead and do it. But having thought about it for quite a long time, having spoken to the people who I trusted to really guide me in the right direction when I wasn't exactly sure on a decision that needed to be made, I eventually came to the conclusion that this was the type of opportunity that I had been waiting and searching for, and it had finally kind of fallen into my lap. And I wasn't really in a position where I could turn this down, because Australia was very much an unknown. And if I have something on the table right in front of me where I can concretely say that that's a definitive step towards me becoming a professional soccer player, then I don't think I should really pass that up. The only problem with all this was I had made all these plans with all these flights, accommodations, all these sort of things, and the season for Germany, when they wanted me to come in, was July 9th. And as I just mentioned, the whole month of July I had effectively booked myself up. So I kind of pivoted and turned on a dime, and what I decided to do was I was still going to go to Australia for the trial. I had spoken to the coach in Germany, and I had said, I have this opportunity in Australia. I want to pursue it and see if there's something in there, and then I'll come and I'll join the team for preseason in Germany, and more towards the middle end of July. I still wound up flying to England as well. That way I thought, I won't have to pay another fee for changing another flight, and what I'll do is I'll reroute the flight, I'll change the date of the flight that was supposed to take me back home to the States. I'll just change that, and I'll have it pushed back to December when I was going to fly home for the winter break. So the plan is fly to Australia, spend time there, fly up to England, I think it was only there for like 2-3 days, then fly to Germany, and that flight that I had initially had booked for myself to get back to the States, get back home, I'll push that back, and I'll still keep that as my return flight, but I'll just pay the change fee or whatever it's called to have the flight moved to December. And when I leave in December, I'll just make sure to fly back out of London, because that's where my plan was. So now the plan is laid out, and I'm ready to go. I've put in my 2 weeks at my job, so I have that taken care of. My coach that I was working for at Widener, where I was coaching from, he actually went and took another job at the end of May, so I didn't have that obligation anymore on that end to come back and return for the fall 2019 season. And I let my club know that I wasn't going to be coming back to coach any more youth teams. So I come home for a couple days. I pack up basically everything, because I'm not going to be coming home for probably about 5-6 months. I go to my best friend's wedding. I come back home. I think there's like a day in between, and then I drive to Newark, and I flew out of Newark and I flew to Melbourne. I arrive in Melbourne, and it's funny because, I don't know, it's something that I always sort of go back and forth on, is, does everything happen for a reason? Is everything sort of already predetermined, or is it destined that things are happening a certain way, or is that not the case? To this day, I really can't tell you, and I think often there's times in my life where I've felt as if that things have worked out for a very specific reason, and they've gotten me to a certain point, and this is kind of an instance where I feel like it really was fate that I wound up choosing this Germany opportunity, and I made sure to to push myself to do it even though it wasn't according to the plan, right? I mentioned how oftentimes, at least with myself, and I know some people face this as well, that when you have a plan and maybe something else enticing is presented to you, but it doesn't fit in that same parameters of the plan that you've made, sometimes you push things aside that could have really been something that you would have enjoyed or would have been a positive, beneficial experience in your life. Luckily, I didn't allow this opportunity of Germany to come in and for me to push it away and not actually go and pursue it. So I say this because about a day before I land in Australia, I'm speaking to my friend who I'm going to go trial with his team, and he's like, hey buddy, like I'm still so happy that you're coming, but I just want to let you know the coach of my club, like a couple weeks ago, he got fired, and I'm actually not playing with the club anymore because I had a falling out with the new coach that they brought in. And had I not known that I was going to Germany after being in Australia and after being in England, I would have been devastated. You know what I mean? I effectively had planned my whole life in anticipation of this one trial, of this one opportunity that I had set. And in that one message, you know what I mean, it's taken off the table. Now I don't have that same connection with the coach or with the team at all, because my friend isn't playing for that team anymore, and now the entirety of my Australia experience is just a vacation, essentially, to go and visit my friend, which, don't get me wrong, was amazing. You know, it was the first time that I really traveled outside of the country, and taught me a lot about myself. Traveling on my own, that's a difficult experience for anybody to go through. I got to see my friend who I hadn't seen in years, so that was amazing, and he showed me a city, and Melbourne's an incredible place, and the entire country of Australia is honestly amazing, and it's a place that I definitely want to return to one day. But I've arrived in Australia, and as I said, I had an amazing time there, but I don't have the trial anymore, so I'm trying to train as much as I can on my own when I'm down there. I trained with my buddy a couple times, and I had a really great experience there. I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful to him and his family for allowing me to come down and stay with them for a few weeks. As I said, I hope to get back down there one day. But I spent about 11, 12 days in Australia, then I flew up to London. Again, traveling on my own. You know, traveling, I had a layover in Brunei, which was a country I honestly, before this journey, I didn't even know existed. You know, as ignorant as that may sound, there were so many just new experiences that this entire trip and this entire experience of my last 6 months of 2019 taught me about myself. And I'm sure I'm going to get into more in detail some of those stories that I have from different travel experiences and being in different countries and all of those things. But I've made my way up to England, and I arrive in London, and I stay with my buddy for a couple days, and that was amazing as well. And we trained quite a bit more, because this was kind of like, you know, the lead up right into me going into the preseason for my club in Germany. And then it's finally time for me to really leave the comfort zone that I was in and fly to Germany. I always felt as if, in a way, I sort of eased myself into Germany, right? Because I flew to Australia, and I stayed with a friend, and I stayed with his family, and while, yes, I was on the opposite side of the world from everything that I knew, I was still in a really comfortable environment with people who I knew and cared about me, and it wasn't this difficult experience, or it wasn't this unknown experience. Same thing when I fly up to England. I'm still, you know, I've lived with my buddy that I'm staying with in England for, you know, years before that. We went to college together. We grew up, I guess, together a little bit for those couple of years that we went to school together. And now Germany is the part where I really have to fly on my own and flap my own wings, I guess you could say. So I arrive in Frankfurt, and I remember I'll never forget the feeling that I had when I first landed at the Frankfurt airport. And I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced the same thing, but the feeling of when you first go to a country and where you don't speak the language, because I know this is something that's been huge for me in my experience in Germany. This was like, for me, it was the first time where I was really experiencing a situation where I was like, I felt so out of my element for a second, and I had so much like anxiety, and it was just this situation where I was kind of put in a sink or swim mentality, and that's kind of a common theme of my Germany experience as a whole is how am I personally going to react when my back is up against the wall and the deck is stacked against me. You know, I'm on my own now in a country that I've never been to before with a language that I do not speak, and am I going to fold under the pressure, or am I going to rise to the occasion? And that first initial moment, and honestly the first day or two, it was tough. Like, I thought maybe I am going to fold. But so I arrive in Frankfurt, and my first 24 hours were something that I'll never forget with my experience with the club. So I've only spoken over the phone or over text with the coach, with the owner of the club. We've never met in person. So I arrive, and the person that I had been speaking to was like, yeah, I'll come pick you up from the airport. So I arrive in Germany. I think my flight landed at like around noon or 1 p.m., something like that. I message him and I'm like, hey, you know, I'm here. And the other thing is I'm fully dressed, and I mean, I'm wearing a sweatshirt, I'm wearing like a pullover, I got my hat on, I got shorts, sweatpants on, because I had packed so much stuff that I wanted to be able to fit it all, and some of the clothes I had to wear on my body so that I could make sure that I could get everything to where I was going. And it just so happened that the week or the day that I landed, it might have been like that was the hottest day like in German history, or it was definitely the hottest week. Like, it was 100 degrees, I kid you not. So I've arrived, I've let the coach know, hey, I'm here, can you come pick me up? Messaged me, yeah, you know, I'll be there in a bit. And it was very weird. Like, there wasn't any clear, decisive, like, yep, we're on our way now, or we're gonna be here at this time. And so I wound up sitting in the airport for 3 hours. Like, I am eventually receiving some correspondence from the coach, and he's telling me, oh, okay, you know, the first team had training, the reserve team had training, had to finish that stuff up, and now finally coming to get you. I'm like, okay, no problem. And then I go get picked up, meet him for the first time, and drive back to where I was staying. So I arrive at where I'm going to be staying with a bunch of the other players, and like I said, the first 24 hours was just insane. So I am shown to the room that I'm going to be staying at, and all the players had these beds that like bought for us that were like you had to put them together with tools, and for whatever reason, like, my room didn't have a bed yet, so they were like, okay, you know, just for tonight, we're getting the rest of the shipment of beds tomorrow. Just for tonight, you'll sleep on this air mattress. And they're also like, unfortunately, like, we don't have any more fans because it's been so hot in Germany. Most of the stores are completely sold out of fans. There's no air conditioning in this building at all either. So the first night I'm staying in this room, it's just me, I don't have my roommate yet, and I'm sleeping on this air mattress. Naturally by the morning, absolutely no air in it whatsoever, so I'm effectively sleeping on the ground. You know, it's my first night in this country, and it's so hot, like, I'm sweating. I remember that first night, you know, I can honestly say without a doubt that I genuinely considered just being like, no, this isn't for me, booking a flight the next day to fly back home, and just giving up. And I mean that 100%, honestly. It was so tough too, because the timeline of the way everything worked out, my family was all on vacation at the time. So I'm calling my mom and talking to my mom and kind of explaining to her the situation while they're all on the beach, all the people that I was, my family that was supposed to be with, they're all on the beach together having a fantastic time, and I'm in this situation where I'm like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? Honestly. And like I said, I that first night, I didn't know. I thought my German experience was going to be very short-lived, and my Germany story was going to be this one chapter of when I arrived and when I left the very next day. So what I want to say about my Germany experience as a whole, before I kind of dive a little bit deeper into what it was it the absolute perfect scenario? Probably not, but I'm incredibly grateful for my time in Germany and for the experience that I had there, because it was the first real definitive step in my career. It was the first step that I took to actually get a little bit closer to this dream. And as I look back on it, I think about the alternative. There wasn't anything in the works for me in the United States. There wasn't anything that I was like, well, if I was back in the States, I could be doing this. Like I said, was Germany perfect in every sense of the word? Probably not, but it was the gateway, and it was the first step for me to hopefully climb the ladder a little bit more and really become that much closer to attaining my dream, and it opened so many doors for me. Not to mention, as I said before, it taught me so much about myself, and there was so much growth that was done in that period of time that I don't necessarily think I'm really the exact same person as when I first left the States. I think being in another country and living on your own is something that really matures you, and something that makes you a better person, because it tests you. It tests your ability to cope, and it tests your drive and your determination. And what I want to say is that sort of segues into what I think is maybe a misconception about everybody's first opportunity that they get in the professional game. There's many people who are blessed with an opportunity, whether they are in an academy system and they are then offered a professional contract, or for those of us who have played in the States, maybe they play at a high Division I level, and then they are drafted, or they have connections through teammates that they've played with to immediately go into a pristine environment overseas. With that being said, there's countless more players who are on the opposite side of that and are simply looking for really just a sniff, just an opportunity, a crack in some club that I can try and I don't want to say weasel my way into, but more or less, just any sort of foothold that I can get with an opportunity. Can I get it, and can I pounce on it, and can I run with it? So most people's first opportunity that they're going to get is not going to be ideal for any real number of reasons. Maybe the level of play is lower than actually what you were playing before. It's lower than what you were playing in college. Maybe the living conditions aren't going to be the best. Maybe, you won't be getting paid. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, there's a clash between you and the management, or coaching styles, or the list can go on and on and on, and maybe it might be just one of those things, or it could be a combination of a couple of those things. But what I want to say is, more often than not, your first opportunity isn't going to be the perfect opportunity for you. Maybe you get lucky and you're blessed with the first club that you get to play with is just, it checks all your boxes for you, and to that I say kudos, well done. But a lot of times it's going to be a lot of struggle and a lot of taking maybe an opportunity or two that isn't going to be perfect, just to build your resume up a little bit more, just to take the next step in what you need to do. So like I said, I am grateful for the Germany experience because, as I'm going to talk about, it allowed me to continue to pursue my dream and eventually wound up being the stepping stone that I needed to really continue my career. Maybe one day there will be a podcast episode that will give you the real behind the scenes of what happened in Germany. And I know I've talked to some of the teammates that I had who I played with in Darmstadt, and we've discussed that a little bit. Maybe that day is coming. I don't know. But I'll tell you, for one thing, that day is definitely not today. I'm sure for those of you who know the club at all or looked it up, you know that can give you an idea of some of the things that are perceived, and you can make up your own mind with what you see. I know there's players that I've played with who have posted things on social media, posted things on YouTube. I can say for definitely there was a player who I played with in the first team who, has a fairly large YouTube following and made an expose, if you will, on the club. I'm not going to say the name, and I'm not going to blow up anybody's spot, but it would be fairly easy for you to go and find that, and then, like I said, make a judgment call for yourself. I'm not here to sway your opinion in any which way. I'm really just here to kind of tell you the story of me and my journey and my playing in Germany. So I am in Germany, living in Darmstadt, and I am playing with the second team. I'm playing with the reserve team of this club. The way the German system works is, if you have a reserve team, the first year that you start your reserve club or your reserve team, they start at the bottom of the pyramid. So in this particular region, there were 12 divisions, and that meant that the reserve team was playing 12th division football in Darmstadt. The first team was in the 8th division, in a league called the Kreis Oberliga. The second team was played in the Kreisliga D, it was called. So the club had a first team, a under 23 or reserve team, and an under 19 academy. So I first come in from the States, and I really have no idea what to expect. I don't know anything about the level at all overseas, especially not in Germany. So you could have told me anything about 12th division and I would have believed it. You could have told me anything about 8th division and I would have believed it. Obviously, I had watched Bundesliga on TV before, but that's not really an accurate depiction of what the lower levels are going to look like. So eventually I get into some games and I start playing with the team, and I will simply say this: 12th division in any country is exactly what you would expect 12th division to look like. It is no different in America than it is in Germany, than it is in Spain, than it is in, take your pick. Point it out on the map. 12th division is Sunday league ball, and the disparity and I don't even mean to sound this, to make this sound in a cocky, arrogant way. The disparity in talent was just astronomical, because you had all of these players, most of us were from overseas, coming in to play for this club, playing 12th division. Most of us, or all of us, have the same aspirations as myself. We're trying to climb the ladder, we're trying to play at the highest possible level that we can, and I can without a doubt say that nobody on my team was a 12th division level caliber of player. the players that we were playing against, and it's no disrespect, I think there's a place for every single person who wants to play this game. There's a place for them to be involved. That's the beautiful thing I think that is present in the sport that we love, is there's an outlet for anyone of any level to play the game. Unfortunately, our team specifically, and really frankly the other teams that were in our division, were kind of put in a difficult spot because, we were going out and, no word of a lie, we were beating teams 23-0. We were just absolutely pummeling teams, and we found ourselves in a sort of tight race for whatever reason near the top of the table, because there was a team from the 11th division the previous year who had been relegated and was trying to go right back up. That was a decent little side, and they were kind of beating everybody else as well. So, us as the club and us as the coaching staff of our club wanted to ensure that we were going to go up. So they were like, you have to win every game. You have to make sure the goal difference is high. So it got ugly sometimes. And like I said, I mean no disrespect to anybody who's playing at that level, but there's a difference between someone or some of the players like ourselves who are, early 20s or teens, hungry and have trained their whole life to try and become a professional, playing against guys in their 30s and 40s who are just coming out to have fun. And right from the beginning, that kind of made it difficult, and that kind of put a strain on our team, because we felt as if we weren't being challenged and we weren't being pushed to that level that we needed to go. When we are in our own trainings and when we're playing with the first team and we're training with the first team, we're being pushed, but then we go out on Sundays and it's kind of like a let-off and it's kind of a drop-off. That was something that was difficult to kind of cope with as the season progressed. As I said, the first team, they played in the 8th division, the Kreis Oberliga, and from the moment that I arrived in Germany, my goal was, as quickly as I could, play well and trying to be bumped up and get in with the first team. Because the first team had quality from top to bottom. There were a lot of really good players that I had the opportunity to play with over in Germany. Players who had played professionally before, players who had Division 1 experience and high-level Division 1 experience. So I wanted to be in that environment as quickly as I could and show myself that I could cut it and that I could hack it, you know what I mean? So probably in terms of that timeline of me trying to make my way into the first team, I got in, I got settled, and luckily for myself, I did kind of do exactly that. I did do fairly well in the first few weeks of playing with the second team. I got named one of the vice captains after about 2 weeks of being there. We went and scrimmaged the first team, one of the first training sessions that I had, and I did fairly well. I played in the center of the park, and we did okay. So early on, there were a couple opportunities here and there where I got invited to train with the first team, and it was really good. It was a great experience, and I'm like, okay, this is the progression that I'm looking for. I started to train with them a little bit. Maybe I start to train with them all the time, then maybe I'm just a first team player eventually. And that's kind of the way that it progressed. In a sense, obviously nothing's ever quite that crystal clear, but I was with the second team, as I said, and training kind of here and there with the first team. And then eventually I had a conversation with my coach, and I was like, with the reserve team, and I said, I feel like me being with the first team is what's necessary for my development, is pushing me, and I feel like I fit in that environment. So, I expressed my frustrations with being at the 12th division level, and I felt like I wasn't a 12th division level player in the brief exposure that I had to that level. So, and he kind of agreed, and we had set out in the beginning that I would train twice a week with the first team, train twice a week with my team, the second team, play second team matches on the weekend. And I was like, perfect. Okay, I'll go and I'll do well, and maybe, we can have hopefully one day parlay that into 3 sessions a week, 4 sessions a week, and continue to progress and continue to push. So that was in about probably late August, early September, where I'm training about half and half and still playing matches on the weekends. Eventually, as it progressed, I would get invited to 3 days a week, and it kind of helped that I had the added benefit of guys in the first team were like, well, are you training with us today? Come train with us, come train with us, come train with us. It was a rigid structure in the sense of who trained where, but I could, I had a good relationship with those guys. I didn't come in and just bring the level way down. But I was able to come in and train a bit more with the first team. And there were some days when I would do 2 sessions a day. I would train with both teams, and it was just, my mindset going in was always, let's make sure that when I leave Germany, whenever that is, that I did everything that I possibly could to ensure that I had the best experience here and that I really made the most of it. You know what I mean? I trained with the first team as much as I possibly could. I trained with my team and pushed myself and just really left everything out there so that when I left Germany, I didn't leave with regrets and what ifs and, well, what if I had done something differently. So eventually I got to the point where I'm training pretty much exclusively with the first team. I'm still not getting any matches. I'm still not getting picked for the 18 for the first team on the weekends. I'm still playing matches with the second team, but I'm training at a consistently high level every single day. And it's pushing me, and at times it's kicking my butt for sure. I'm not going to come on here and tell you that, without a doubt, I should have been given more opportunity with the first team and the coaching staff didn't see it and anything like that, because I can honestly evaluate myself and evaluate my talent, my ability in that player pool and say I was probably closer to the bottom of that level. If there were 20 guys at training, I was more closer to that 17 to 20 range in terms of talent than I was, necessarily pushing for the first 11. Especially because with the club I was playing in center midfield. I can play really anywhere in the center. I'd say probably like a 6 or an 8 or either of the fullback positions. And honestly, in my time in Germany, I played pretty much everywhere. I played right back, played left back in matches, and I played the 6 and I played the 8 as well. So in the early stages of my time in Germany, I was more so exclusively in the center. And the players that the first team had in the center were quality, and I really mean that. And I took that as an opportunity to push myself every day to try and get onto that same level, but also to learn from them. And I would ask guys that I was playing with in the first team that were playing the same positions as me, or really just anybody. Like I would just ask them questions. Why did you do this? Why did you make that turn? Or if they would come and watch the second team play, they'd be like, what did you think? What did you think? Or what can I do better? That type of thing. As I just said, I wanted to make sure that I left no stone unturned and I could leave Germany knowing that I did everything that I possibly could. And I want to just say, to any players who are listening to this out there, is that never let your ego get in the way of you developing as a player. It's one of the most detrimental things I feel like a player can have is when they let their ego get in the way of, if you see a player who you feel like is better than you, or maybe not even better than you on the whole, but can do one specific element of the game better than you, ask them about it. How do you train that? Or what did you do? Or in this moment, why did you make the decision that you made? Try and be a sponge and try and learn as much as you can from every environment that you're a part of. Don't just let your coach be the one to exclusively coach you. Learn from the players that you're playing with and whether that be in training or whether that be in matches, try and learn and evaluate your strengths and weaknesses and take things on board and really try and grow yourself as a player. So that's what I tried to do. And like I said, I felt like in the first team, I was kind of in the lower bracket of the players in there. And, you know, maybe in the beginning, I wouldn't say I should have been picked for the 18. I will say, I think in fairness to myself, as the season progressed, there were a couple of occasions where I felt like I maybe should have been called into the 18. Still maybe not in the 11 or anything like that, but, you know, there were times with injuries and with suspensions and with players who had left the club that there were spots to fill, and I was training every day with the team and knew the level and felt like I could compete at that level. So I felt as if maybe, you know, I deserved a little bit more of a sniff at that level, but hey, that's the way that football works, and it's not always going to be clear cut, and it's not always going to be fair. You know what I mean? It's not always as simple as, okay, well, I'm the backup center midfielder right now, and the center midfielder got injured, he's not going to play, so they're just going to call me up into the team. It doesn't work like that, and sometimes it might, but sometimes a coach may make a different decision, may move a player into a different position and call up somebody else. I will say that there was a few occasions where some of the decisions that were made by the club and by the coaching staff in regards to the first team and some of their matches I didn't agree with, and I felt kind of hard done by, that I wouldn't go as far to say disrespectful, but it didn't really feel like the right way to go about doing things with decisions that were made. And, you know, I know that football's a cutthroat business and it's a cutthroat world, but I didn't necessarily get any explanations about why things were done the way that they were. And it bothered me for a while. It did. It kind of ate away at me, but, you know, like I said, to each their own, and that's the decision that they chose to make. So I just have to live with it, and I have to move on, and I have to be accountable for my own actions, and that's really all that I can do, independent of what a coach chooses to do, independent of what a club chooses to do. I can only control what I can control, and that was a motto and a philosophy that I had to remind myself countless times, and I had to ensure that I kept myself in that lane of holding myself accountable, and, you know, not just simply putting blame on everything else. I think that's a really hard thing for young people to realize, and it took me a long time to realize as well, is once you take full accountability and you take full ownership of all the decisions that you make, good or bad, in a way it makes your life easier, right? Because I could have been in a position at this club where I could have blamed everything else around me. And certainly there were times that I did, but if I simply blame everyone around me, you know, if I blame the coach for not picking me, or if I blame the players, you know, if I'm one of those guys who's like, oh, they're not actually that good, I'm way better than them, I deserve it, the coach just doesn't see it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you guys all know. You've heard these players countless times, and you've played with some of them, you've played against some of them, the guys who just, it's everybody else's fault but their own. That is such an exhausting way to go about football, and it's really an exhausting way to go about your life, to be honest with you, because you hold this burden of always, you don't necessarily get closure, right? So in my circumstance, I felt as if, yeah, maybe I was hard done by those around me, but I just said, you know what, I wasn't good enough, didn't perform at the level that I needed to be, and maybe I'm just not the right fit for the first team at the time, or for the first team in general. You know, maybe my style of play or what I'm doing or what I'm putting forth just isn't going to mesh and and fit with the direction of the club. So when I take that upon myself and I look at myself intrinsically and say, well, I'm the reason why I'm not in that situation, or I'm the reason why I'm not in that first team match this evening, it makes it so much easier because I'm not still holding on to this grudge and this anger towards an external factor that can't give me the same closure that I can to myself. So now I've come to the conclusion, right, and probably in about October, where I'm like, okay, you know, there was kind of one moment specifically where I felt like this was the opportunity that I would potentially get called into the first team. Didn't happen for a variety of reasons. And while going into the season, my motivation and my mindset was, how quickly can I get into the first team? Can come the second half of the season, can I be a fully first team player, and can I be playing consistently with the first team? You know, getting minutes or maybe even in the starting 11 from time to time. That was the goal. As the season progressed, as I learned more things about the club, as I learned more things about myself as a player, I came to the conclusion, okay, maybe there is really no realistic route for me to get into the first team. As I said, that's for a variety of reasons. So I circle back to the accountability factor, right? I knew that there were kind of two scenarios that could play out here. I could see out the rest of the season doing exactly what I'm doing, come home and be like, well, it just didn't work out. The first team wasn't interested in me. I felt like I was doing well enough, but the coaches didn't see it and they didn't pick me and blah, blah, blah. Or I can go out and, you know, I'm in Germany. There's hundreds and hundreds, honestly thousands of clubs in this country. So why not go and, like I said, make sure I leave it all in this country. Give it everything that I have and don't get on a plane back to the States with regrets and wishings and wonderings what could have been. So I stopped feeling sorry for myself and I stopped being frustrated with the external factors at play, and I just said, you know what, all right, let's tighten up the bootstraps and let's go to work. So put together a highlight video of the first couple of games that I had played, you know, maybe had 3 to 4 minutes of just some clips, put it together, finalized it, and then this is probably about mid-October. When I tell you, my day was essentially, I would wake up, go to training, maybe do a little bit of extra work, something like that, maybe do a gym workout if that's what the day entailed, and then I would come back and I would email clubs. Almost every club in the area. I started to expand my search to other regions as well, and you know, I can say I probably emailed hundreds of clubs. I would reach out to them and I would just say, hey, you know, I'm here, I'm in Germany, I'm playing at this level, I'm looking for an opportunity to play at a higher level, here's a little bit of my footage, and here's my CV. Let me know if I can come in for a trial. That was it. And it was just find the next club, do the same thing, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And eventually I started to get some responses. So I started to go on trials. I think in my time that I was there, when I finally started sending emails, from that time until December when I left, I think I went on 8 trials, maybe. And I'm sure I'll do another episode in the future talking about the trials that I went on and some of the stories that I have from them. But sort of what my days would start to look like is, now I would wake up, go to training. Usually I would go train with the first team, and then when training with the first team was over, I would come back, eat something, and then sometimes, depending on how far away the team was, it was like right then I would have to go, walk to the train station, and hop on any number of trains. You know, sometimes there would be like 3 trains over the course of 3 hours to get me to the training ground where I was supposed to trial. And I would go and I would trial with these teams. Then I would hop back on the train, get back home, sometimes at like midnight, 1, 2 a.m. even, take a shower, which was, there was this really fun thing about the place that we were staying at, which I don't know why this always happened, but it was not always, I shouldn't say always. It was like 50-50 chance whether or not if you took a shower really late at night or early in the morning, whether or not you were going to have hot water. So there'd be times where, I would have left at like 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. or something, took train, got to the training ground, trained from like 6:30 to 8 or 7 to 9, something like that, hopped on the train again, get home at midnight, get home at 1 a.m., and I would turn on the water and it would just be ice cold. And it was like, it's October, November at this point in Germany. Like it's not warm outside either. So there were a couple of just really fast cold showers I would take. There were some times where I couldn't do it. I wasn't strong enough. And I would like just go and sit in my room and wait and check in like an hour and see if the water had turned hot. But it was a whirlwind of a time, and it was an experience that taught me a lot about myself, and I grew so much from it. I'm in a foreign country where I don't speak the language, and I'm figuring out a public transportation system, which for me, growing up in a suburban town in Niskayuna, I never had any interactions really with public transportation. Obviously, in Europe and Germany specifically, it's much, much different than it is in the United States, but still, it was something that I had to learn and I had to figure out, and I definitely made some mistakes with it along the way, but I eventually sort of mastered it, and I would go to these trials, oftentimes 2-3 times a week, and I would do that pretty consistently. I think, from when I started emailing, probably the following week and all the way up until the end of the season, I was going on trials almost every week. So it was a hectic, busy schedule, and it was, like I said, it was a whirlwind, but it was an amazing experience. I got to meet so many players, so many coaches, train with so many teams, and really kind of get a gauge for what actually is my level and where do I fit in this, this grand pyramid of German football. So I sort of started to get that as well, that sort of almost data collecting of what is my level and where should I be aiming to move next. On the flip side of that, I'll also say it was tough and it was taxing on my body. This is really one of the first times where I had it really hammered home for me how imperative it is to make sure that you're recovering properly, make sure that you're getting enough sleep, and how all those things can directly impact your performance. As I said, I would train in the morning with the first team. I would go eat something. I would hop on public transportation, take a variety of trains, usually bring some sort of like snack with me because I can't really like bring a dinner with me. Maybe with some fruit or a granola bar or something. Eat that, train, then hop back on transportation to get back home and maybe get to sleep by like 1-2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes later than that. And then I'm only getting 4-5 hours sometimes sleep prior to the next training when I have to do it all over again the next day. And always on those days, the day afters, right, the back-to-backs, I guess you could say, I always struggled and my level always dropped, and I just felt like I couldn't, I wanted to be faster and play quicker, and my speed of play was just lower and my touch was sometimes just awful. And I think I was just lucky prior to that where I could get away with overtraining a little bit and I didn't see any huge deficits or huge drop-offs in my level, so I just thought I could continue to go at the same rate. This really put it right in front of me and shoved it right in my face that it's like, no, you can't. You have to be mindful of these types of things, and it was difficult, but at the same time it was like a sacrifice that I had to make because, I didn't think that there was an opportunity for me to get into the first team. So I needed to go out and explore other opportunities, but at the same time, I couldn't just skip training. I couldn't just not go to the club that I'm a part of, their training. I mean, luckily I was in a good enough situation where I was allowed to go on these trials, but sometimes you're not even going to be blessed with that type of opportunity. It was really a balancing act and a juggling act of, can I still train at a high level so I can stay fit and sharp, but can I go out and trial with these new clubs as well and try and find a new outfit for myself for when we come back from the winter break in March. And eventually, it's funny, it's actually the very last trial that I went on wound up being the team that I signed with. It was a 6th division team in the Landesliga in Bremen, which is northern Germany. So I had gone up to Bremen for a couple of days. I think I stayed there for 3 or 4 days. I booked a hotel for myself, and I trialed with the team twice. That was another cool thing about these trials, was I got to experience and explore some of the other cities that Germany has to offer. I had a trial in Bremen and I had a trial in Berlin. So I got to experience both of those cities. I got to kind of do all the touristy type things. And they were both incredible cities. So as I said, I was in Bremen for a couple of days. I trialed with the club twice, and they were interested in bringing me on. So after all the teams that I had trialed with, I felt like this was the best opportunity for me, so I went with the team in Bremen. It was called DJK Germania Blumenthal, and that was right at the end of the season. So I finished up that trial, and I think I had another week left in Germany before my flight. So I finish out the season with Darmstadt and hop on a plane and fly back to the States. And that's where I've been ever since. My plan was, as I talked about a little bit before, my plan was in March of this year, I was supposed to fly back and I was going to be living in Bremen. This would have been probably month 2 of me living in Germany on my own, playing for the club. Obviously, the coronavirus derailed all of that, and I'm in a much different position now. To update you currently, I've been staying with my family in New York. I've been training as much as I can. I've been working, trying to save up a little money here and there where I can pick up some work. And I sort of have, I guess I have a clean slate with what's next for me and where I'm going to go and when I'm going to go. I've been still in contact with the club in Germany. There's no real definitive date that they're going to start back up or what the rest of the season is going to look like for them. I've also been in contact with some other clubs as well in different parts of the world and some other contacts that I've reached out to. So I'm really just trying to figure out what the next step for me is and when that's going to be. If you stuck around with me thus far, I appreciate it. I would also greatly appreciate if you could continue to spread the word about this podcast and help me kind of promote it and get the name out there. Continue to share it with your friends. If you like the story, if you like the podcast, give me feedback if you have it, questions, comments, concerns. I would definitely encourage you to reach out to me. We've done pretty well thus far with listeners and people's feedback. So this has been something that I've been having fun with, and I feel as if I'm getting better each and every time that I do this. And I hope that you guys stick around and keep listening as I have more stories to share with you and more experiences and topics that I want to discuss. So I look forward to sitting down with you guys again next week, and I will talk to you all soon. Peace.